worth. Comes on the heels of President Obama's trip to Canada yesterday. While there, Mr. Obama took time to praise Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper for his country's commitments to the war in Afghanistan.
I certainly did not press the Prime Minister on any additional commitments beyond the ones that have already been made. All I did was to compliment Canada.
Suzanne Malveaux is live for us at the White House today, and President Obama striking a tone that we didn't really hear in the Bush years, but still some tensions between the U.S. and Canada, particularly over this idea of renegotiating NAFTA and then the Buy American clause in the stimulus bill.
You know, John, you're absolutely right. There are a lot of sticky points between these two leaders, but you really are getting a different kind of tone from this president. Back when President Bush was meeting with Stephen Harper, the prime minister, these two leaders, they had a lot more in common with their conservative views in their parties. But what President Obama is trying to do is simply show the rest of the world, setting the stage, that this is going to be a more nuanced and diplomatic way of doing business, that you're not going to get these kind of public ultimatums. We know that the president wants more cooperation from NATO allies. We know that he would love to have those Canadian troops stay longer than 2011, but it's just not a place where he is going to go. It really is a signal to the rest of the world, not just Canada, but all those other leaders who were watching yesterday. How are you going to deal with me? He wants to show them that it's going to be diplomatic and respectful, John.
Suzanne, though, the Canadian Prime Minister, being stern with the new president, saying that we expect the United States to live up to its agreements. But on the overall, you and I were both at the meeting that the president had with the Canadian Prime Minister Chrétien back in 2001. You watched this visit very closely. How was this one different than that 2001 visit by President Bush?
Well, certainly it was amazingly different because you had thousands of people this time around who were lining the streets at the parliament. They just couldn't get enough of Barack Obama. Before, we had protests for President Bush. He didn't go to a lot of places. It was really kind of staying away from some folks. He was very unpopular. But yesterday, they even changed their schedule. They didn't have anything that was public that was actually scheduled. He ended up going to a farmer's market, buying a keychain and what they call a beaver tail, this kind of flattened donut. And one of the bakers, I understand, a bakery actually named an Obama tail after one of these donuts here. So it reminds me more of actually the Clinton days when you and I covered Clinton and we were in Africa, and there were thousands of people who were lining the streets, just couldn't get enough of him. That's the same kind of thing you're seeing with this president.
Yeah, I remember Clinton's visit to Oslo when he was traveling up to the palace, and people were lining the streets 4 or 5 deep. It was a pretty incredible scene. It's a shame, though, that he didn't spend more than 7 hours there. There's a lot to see in the Ottawa Hall area besides just the beaver tails.
You're absolutely right. And he probably could have seen a lot more Canadians who were very anxious to get a glimpse of him. You know, he has an 82% approval rating in that country, more so higher than here. So really kind of an incredible situation.
And while beaver tails are tasty, it's probably the most unhealthy thing he's eaten in the last 6 months.
He actually didn't eat it. He bought it, but he didn't eat it.
Gotcha. Suzanne Malveaux, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks. Karen?
Can't say I blame him.